Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new here, my name is Nkenna. I am responsible for all of the shenanigans here. As you guys can tell from the title, today's video is going to be all about the application process of applying to medical school. So it's just going to be a few tips and pointers and then just a little bit of background information. Hopefully you guys find this helpful if you are applying to medical school, or if you are hoping to apply next cycle, or if you're just someone in the future it interests you and you want a little bit more information. Hopefully this can guide you in the kind of the right direction. So first things first, the first tip that I would definitely give everybody is to apply far and wide. A lot of the physicians that I work with at my job as a scribe in the emergency departments, they've all told me that you should apply far and wide. A lot of them said anywhere from 20 to 30 schools, and I know that can sound very overwhelming, especially with like the next piece of information that I'm going to give you guys, but definitely I would say don't limit yourself, don't limit your potential. You want to have as many options as possible. I just like to be humble, never be too confident, and I just always want to have that safety and security and know that I exhausted my resources and I did the best that I could. So definitely apply far and wide. I think I applied to 27 schools total, and I also applied to MD and DO schools. So going off of that, I did apply to MD and DO schools. They do use two separate application services. For MD schools, they use AMCAS, and then you do run into certain schools and certain regions and areas do use their own application service. So just keep that in mind when you're applying, that you might have to use multiple services in order to apply and submit all of your credentials. For MD schools, majority of them use AMCAS, and then for DO schools, I believe all of them use ACOMAS. So when you're talking about applying to these schools, then for MD schools, when you're using the AMCAS application service, then the price of the application varies. The first application, you're gonna pay $160, and then every application that you add on after that first one is going to be $39. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you're saying, okay, I'm gonna apply to 15 schools, then you have to say, okay, that first school is gonna be $160, and then every application after that is gonna be $39. For DO schools, when using ACOMAS, the first application is gonna be $195, and then every application after that is gonna be $45. So again, that's something to take into consideration. First one is $195, and then every one after that is $45. So going back to the tips, tip number 2 would definitely be to apply early. The application services, they do open about the same time. So for AMCAS on May 1st, you can start submitting all of your information. You can send in your transcripts, you can start submitting your extracurricular activities and any background information on yourself, start putting in your course rate and your grades. All of those things you can start submitting on May 1st. However, you cannot actually submit your application until June 6th. After June 6th, they start processing your application, sending it out to the schools that you have applied to. And then on July 1st, that's when secondary applications open. So schools will start sending out secondary applications, and a lot of schools do screening and filtering. So if you do get a secondary application, that's the time frame of around when you'll be getting it. For ACOMAS, the actual application opens on May 1st, and then you can start submitting all of your information, sending it off to schools to be processed on June 15th. So you do have a good chunk of time to get everything in there, and then after that, some schools will screen and send out secondary applications. Other schools send secondary applications to everybody. So you want to give yourself a good amount of time to get that done, get that over with. And it is in the summer when most people are out of school, so you do have that free time if you're not taking summer classes or if you're not working. I believe I misspoke. ACOMAS, it opens on May 1st. I believe you can start submitting it as of May 1st, and then they don't start processing and sending out your application until June 15th. The next tip in terms of applying to school would be to ask for your letters of recommendation early. I've heard anywhere from people asking at the beginning of the semester. So if you're applying, let's say you were applying this past application cycle, they started asking in December of last school year for their letters of recommendation so that they would have them ready for May. I asked for mine. I gave all of my recommenders about a 2 to 3 month time frame, and that seemed to be good with them. However, I asked people that I knew, and I said, does it work with your schedule? If not, then let me know and I can ask somebody else. And I did ask a lot of people to keep those options open. But definitely you can ask people early, and if they do finish it quickly, there are services like Interfolio. That's the only one that comes to mind. There are services like Interfolio that you can get your letter, have it uploaded, and then when the time comes to apply to school, then let's say you ask for your letter of recommendation in August and you're not applying till next May, you may lose contact with that professor, but you still already have that letter of recommendation, so you don't have to go back and backtrack and try and keep in touch and things like that. You can do that, but then you also have the option of a service that keeps all of your letters of recommendation in a safe place, and you can just submit them all at once, and you can ask for them gradually. The next tip in terms of applying to medical school would be to see if you qualify for fee waivers. I know that some people, not everybody can afford that. That is a hefty price. I personally have always just worked 2 jobs. So from one job, I would keep one paycheck and use that for all of my financial needs, like paying bills and car maintenance and things like that. And then from another job, I would just have a separate savings account and set that money away and say, okay, I'm gonna use this for med school application purposes. So not everybody can do that. I understand working 2 jobs is very strenuous. It's very time consuming. So not everybody can do that. But if you're not someone who your parents aren't going to pay for everything, I would definitely look into seeing if you qualify for fee waivers. And that definitely can help with the application process and also for the MCAT and other things like that. So definitely look into that. And fee waivers are offered by ACOMAS and by AMCAS. Of course, it is on a first come, first served basis. So I would say even months before the actual application opens, go ahead and submit your paperwork. Know that it's already taken care of, so when the time comes to apply, you can just apply and not even stress yourself out. Tip number 4 in terms of applying to medical school would be to read previous secondary prompts. I know that a lot of schools end up using the same secondary prompts year to year. So if you are someone who is applying, and if you feel pretty confident, or even if you just want to see what it is in the event that you do get a secondary, you can go on websites like Student Doctor Network or just Google or anything. And there are some people in forums, they will post secondary prompts from previous years, so you can get a general idea of what you may have to write for that school. And if you want, you can even go ahead and start making a draft. There's no certainty of whether they're going to use the same prompt for the year that you apply, but it's always good to just get an idea and kind of get those creative juices flowing to know what to expect. Tip number 5 would be to update your CV. I did this months before it was time to apply, but I went through and I have a separate resume in terms of applying for jobs, and then I have my CV with all of my volunteer experience, all my leadership activities, campus and community involvement, like mentoring and things like that. I have all of my work experience on there. Just all my credentials, like all of my academic history, everything is on there. So I went through and made sure that all the stuff that I wouldn't put on my resume, I went through and put, like, I did a girl power event where I went and talked to young girls, and it was like a student athlete event. Girls from different sports went and talked to people. So I put that on there. We had to do some kind of Marine Corps leadership training, so I put that on there. I did a thing called Shop with a Bulldog, where basically you and a partner fundraise money, and then you take a local Athens, Clarke County child Christmas shopping. However, you buy them like educational gifts for a kid who normally wouldn't have as great of a Christmas as you were able to provide for them. So I went through and put all of that stuff that I would not put on my resume, I put on my CV, and just made sure everything was up to date, so that when it came time to fill in my applications, then it was easy. I would be like, okay, I did this, and made sure I wasn't forgetting anything, because it can be very easy to lose track of like all the stuff that you did. And I was even surprised myself. I was like, wow, I really did a lot, because you kind of forget if you don't have it on your resume. I mean, how often do I use a CV? And it's also good to update your CV, because I know a lot of people who write you letter of recommendations want to see that. I know a lot of the physicians, every single physician asked me to send a copy. The 3 physicians that I asked for letters, they said, can you send me a copy of your CV? And then all of my professors, I sent them a copy, and it just makes it more personable. I mean, obviously these people are going to know you, but they can add like, okay, she's really involved in the community, or she's really passionate about this. It's just always good to have it updated so people can see what exactly they're working with. Tip number 6 would be to order official copies of your transcripts. You can order them online. I know that the schools that I went to, I know like UGA, it's cheaper to get an electronic one than to get one actually printed and go pick it up or have it mailed to you. But it's good to have it in front of you. You can always look at your unofficial transcript. However, I like hard copies of stuff. So I'm sure unofficial transcripts, they're free, but when you have to input your coursework, then it's easier for me to just be holding it and being like, okay, in biology, I got this. In physics 1, I got an 89. Like, yeah. Oh my goodness, I'm forever gonna hold a grudge about that. But anyway, I digress. You know, it's easier to be able to see the grades right in front of you and just input them quickly like that. So I would say order a transcript, have it in front of you. However, you can always use a free unofficial transcript if you work best that way. I just like to be able to look at it and do it simultaneously. The second to last tip that I would give you guys is to make sure that you take your MCAT well before June or July of the application cycle. I would even say even before May, just because it does take a month and 1 day to get your scores back. So you can have all of your letters of recommendation ready. You can have everything else completed, processed, and sent to school. You can be getting secondaries. However, most schools start doing interviews and filling their classes on a rolling basis starting in August. So if you're taking your MCAT in August and you're not getting your scores back to September, or even if you're taking your MCAT in September and not getting your scores back until October, they've already been filling seats on a rolling basis since August, and you've put yourself at a disadvantage by 2 months. So I know some schools might say that it takes them 4 to 6 weeks to process your MCAT scores. So that's a whole nother month to a month and a half that you have to wait. And by that time, it's like already anxiety. You know, most of these schools only have anywhere from 100 to maybe 150 seats to fill. So you want to make sure that you're not doing yourself a disservice by taking your MCAT late and then, you know, potentially just running the risk of not getting accepted because you waited so long to get that critical piece in. And then the final tip that I have for you guys might be looking at me like I'm crazy, but would be to write a letter of recommendation for yourself. I know one issue that I encountered with my application process was that two of my recommenders asked me to write the letter of recommendation, which was no issue. I sat down, I wrote it, I sent it back to them. They put it on an official letterhead, signed it, and uploaded it. However, there was one recommender who I told him that the deadline was approaching. I needed to make sure I got all my stuff in because I got a secondary application and he still hadn't submitted his. So I went ahead and took it upon myself to write the letter because I had already paid the money for the secondary and the school required that I had 2 DO references. So I went ahead, wrote it, and then I just brought it in. It was already on letterhead and I just got him to sign it. I was like, can you please submit this for me? And he did it, took care of it that day. So you just want to always make sure that you're prepared because sometimes you will run into professors who will say, well, can you just write the letter of recommendation yourself? Or maybe you're in like a 300-person lecture hall and you didn't really get to know your professor that well. I've heard some of my friends saying that their professors will have like all these standard questions that they ask you, kind of like an interview format to get to know you better. If you are in that instance of you're in like a 300-person lecture hall, and then they can write this kind of generic letter. And then there are some professors who will say, can you write the letter yourself? Because they really didn't get to know you. And some schools will require that you have a letter from a biology, chemistry, or physics professor only. So that's just something to keep in mind, that you may have to write your own letter of recommendation just because maybe you don't know your professors that well and they do require you to have a professor reference. But if you're getting a letter from a physician, then you want to make sure that it's somebody that you know, that if there's nothing else to say about that. You want to make sure that you're asking somebody that really knows you, but I know that it can be hard when getting those academic letter requirements. It can be hard to find a professor that you know on a personal basis. So you guys, that is everything. I really hope that you guys found this helpful. As always, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down in the comment section below. I also have an email in the description box. You guys can click that and send me any questions that you might have you want covered in a video, or if you just want me to personally respond to you, I can definitely do that. But as always, I hope that you guys found this to be a valuable resource. If there are any other topics that you guys want me to cover, comment them down below or shoot me an email. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.
So blurry, trying to slow it down, stay close to the ground, but we're always in a hurry now. And if I could make this world spin a little slower.